Anybody familiar with this case? I happened to see his home, well, one of his homes in Florida. Don't ask me how I got there. I didn't go inside, but I was outside. And, you know, it's multi-million-dollar mansions. Now, Dick Grasso was the CEO of the New York Stock Exchange. The New York Stock Exchange, as you know, provides oversight to companies that are going to have their shares freely traded. So as CEO of the New York Stock Exchange, Dick Grasso's in charge of the operations there, and by all accounts is doing a good job. He especially gets high points for getting the exchange working within a week of the attacks of 9/11. As you know, the 9/11 attacks, you know, took place right there on Wall Street where the New York Stock Exchange is. Everything was in a state of chaos. But, you know, he really showed his ability to make the system respond and work when he got that stock exchange moving again within a week. Dick Grasso spent his entire career at the New York Stock Exchange. He wanted to be a cop. He didn't go to college, or he didn't graduate from college. I don't know if he went. He wanted to be a cop, but he was a little too small and his eyesight was poor. And so he got a job as a, I don't know, some kind of a, you know, low-level, entry-level employee in the New York Stock Exchange. And over the course of 30 years, he worked his way up to become the CEO. And then he was fired. And the reason he was fired is because the board discovered that he was paid an enormous amount of money. The board discovered, it's kind of weird how they discovered this. The board discovered that he had deferred compensation of $140 million. And by the way, the board owed him another $50 million. There was another $50 million. This is in addition to his salary as the CEO of the New York Stock Exchange. By the way, I should point out to you, the New York Stock Exchange is a not-for-profit organization. Now, I don't want that to enter into our discussion too much, because in fairness, I think, you know, this is a important organization, a powerful organization. And so let's not let that color too much our discussion. But it does have some relevance when he gets sued by the Attorney General a little later on. All right. So what happens is his contract is about to come up. His contract gets renewed, but he decides that before he renews his contract, he's going to take his deferred compensation. And that's when the board realizes that he has deferred compensation in the amount of $140 million. Now here's the interesting thing, and the board goes nuts. They said, are you kidding me? You're getting paid $140 million. Well, almost all of that deferred compensation, maybe all of it, was during his time as CEO. So, I mean, this isn't like compensation that he built up over 30 years. This was his time as CEO. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. The board, who, when they find this out, decide to fire him in a 13-7 vote, by the way. The vote was 13-7 to fire him. The interesting thing is, do you know who decided that he should get this compensation? The board. And he made the point that I never once even negotiated with the board for my compensation. Every year, the board would give me a contract, and all I would say was, "Thank you, I am blessed." That's what he said. "Thank you, I am blessed." Now, you explain to me, how can it be that the board, who decided that he would get this compensation, voted that he would get this compensation, agreed that he would get this compensation, when they were reminded that they gave him this compensation, they fired him because they were mad he was making so much money? How can this be? What is going on here? I think we have to unpack this to really understand what's happening. But first, let me get your thoughts about it. Why do you think this happened? So, yes, Bill.
I think a lot of board members phone in their participation. They on the board for prestige and for their pay, and they don't pay attention.
They don't know what's going on.
Clearly, they don't. I mean, it's self-evident.
Part of the reason is what you said, that board members are not as engaged as they should be, especially in these details. I'll get into what it means to be a board member in a second. But there's more to it than that, Dave.
I'd say the environment also probably changed along the way, where that was perfectly acceptable, and then everything changed with the financial crisis and then on.
Yes, although this did happen before the financial crisis, before the the housing bust. But after 9/11, I think this happened in 2003. Was when he got fired. I may be slightly off on that one. So CEO salaries were still, considered high back then. They're still high today. They haven't gone down. Heidi?
I think they're probably too concerned with the short term that they fail to see that long-term visits. The amount's going to start building, and we won't be able to pay it long-term.
Well, yeah, you're probably right there. We always have trouble with short-term and long-term kinds of stuff, but I agree. Part of the problem was the board, was a little bit on the clueless side here. But there's more. There's more to it than that. There is more to it than that.
One is board is not aware of it. The other thing is, did he voluntarily reveal that he's drawing so much of salary?
Well, here's the interesting part. Yeah, now we need to understand a little bit better the relationship between the CEO and the board and how these relationships exist. Now, in the abstract, on paper, this is the way it works. The shareholders investors or owners, whatever you prefer, elect a board, and the board provides oversight to the CEO, who, of course, manages the operations. Yes, Adi?
Did the board change?
Well, the board probably changes from time to time, but this is not a case of a new board being upset by what an old board did. These were the guys that gave him this compensation package. The people that fired him were the same people that gave him the compensation package. Yes. Yes. Now, how does something like that work? So here we have in the abstract the way the relationship is supposed to work. And as you can see, the shareholders are in complete control, theoretically, because they can vote for who the board members are going to be. So the shareholders are going to decide ultimately who's operating in our interest, and if a board member is not operating in their interest, they can remove that board member